who is Brian Tracy, who we now have on the line. So thank you, Gennady, for your insightful and lively introduction to the course today. I have the great privilege to introduce you all to the world-renowned speaker, Mr. Brian Tracy. He is a trainer and a writer of personal and business development. He is chairman and CEO of Brian Tracy International, a company specializing in the training and development of individuals and organizations. Brian Tracy has consulted for more than 1,000 companies and addressed literally millions of people in thousands of talks throughout the USA, Canada, and 75 other countries worldwide. Astonishing. As a keynote speaker and a seminar leader, he addresses more than 250,000 people each year. He has studied, researched, written, and spoken for 30 years in the fields of economics, history, business, philosophy, and psychology. He is the top-selling author of 100 books that have been translated into dozens of languages. He's written and produced more than 300 audio and video learning programs, including the worldwide best-selling Psychology of Achievement, which has been translated into more than 28 languages. He speaks to corporate and public audiences on the subject of personal and professional development, including the executives and staff of many of America's largest corporations. His exciting talks and seminars on leadership, selling, self-esteem, goals, strategy, creativity, and success psychology bring about immediate changes and long-term results. So be ready yourselves for today's talk from the great man himself, Mr. Brian Tracy. Mr. Tracy, a huge welcome to you, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for those kind words. You read them exactly the way I wrote them. And so I'm very happy to be with our friends here today. And the subject that we've chosen, that you have chosen, is the subject of negotiating. And negotiating is one of the most important subjects in the world because everyone negotiates from the time they're a child to the time they die. And every time that you ask for a better situation, a better result, a better payment, you are negotiating. And either you're a good negotiator or you're not. But a good negotiator will save or gain an average of 20% over the course of their lifetime. That means that you will pay 20% less on average, sometimes 50% less, and you will sell your products and services for an average of 20% more, simply because you know how to negotiate. The reason why people are not good negotiators is the major fear that people have, the major two fears, are the fear of failure and the fear of rejection. So people are afraid to negotiate in their own best interest because they are afraid that they will be rejected, that people will say no, that people will disapprove of them, that people will react in a negative way. And what you have to do is you have to get over that. I have negotiated many millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transactions in the course of my life. I used to do group negotiating, where it would be me and a group of executives, usually 6 to 8, and we would be in a room in a hotel for 2 to 3 days, and it was them negotiating with me. The 6 or 8 of those executives and one person, me, and we would go through 30, 40, 50-page contracts and go clause by clause by clause and negotiate it. And the amounts involved were millions of dollars. And I was always successful in these negotiations because of the things I'm going to teach you guys today. Is remember, you have the ability to be an absolutely excellent negotiator. And negotiating is very much like typing with a keyboard. You just simply have to learn how to do it. And then you breathe in, you breathe out, and you always negotiate in your own best interest. Remember I said that even babies negotiate. Well, you have to have something to bring to the negotiation. So what do babies have? Babies have their smiles. and their Googles and their little shows of affection. And they actually trade those very carefully with their parents. If their parents please them, they smile and they Google, and they're happy children, which is what all parents want. If their parents don't take care of them or don't respond when they cry, then they withhold their currency. Their currency when they're young is the ability to be charming to their parents. So everybody has something to trade, and it may be time, and it may be money, and it may be support, it may be affection or respect, but everybody has something to trade when they come to a negotiation. And it's very important that you know what it is. So in this lesson, we'll talk about what I consider to be the 5 or 6 most important parts of negotiating. And I have written 300-page books on negotiation. I have trained thousands, tens of thousands of executives and salespeople and entrepreneurs on how to negotiate. And as a result, they have been able to earn or save hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars or euros. And so you will be able to do it as well. And I started off, I was a terrible negotiator. And then I made a decision that I am going to be a good negotiator. And I began to read and study and then practice, practice, practice. Every single time I got a chance to negotiate, I would ask for a higher price. If I was selling, I would ask for a lower price if I was buying. Now, the most important word in negotiation is the word ask. Ask for more or ask for less. Ask for what you want. Ask in a charming way, ask in a friendly way, ask so it makes it easy for the person to comply with your request, but always ask for what you want. And keep that in mind. The word ask is the key to you becoming an excellent negotiator. It's absolutely amazing what people will give you if you just ask. And I can think of contracts and business that I've done that involved hundreds of thousands of dollars or euros and millions of dollars. And I got what I wanted just by asking, and then asking again, and then asking in a different way. So here's the things that you'll learn is how to ask your way to success, the use of power and negotiating. You know, it's interesting is you have you have here you have power, and you need to use your power. And if you don't use your power, then the other person will use their power against you. How emotions can help you or hurt you in negotiating. The person who is more emotional always is at a disadvantage to the person who is less emotional. So one of the things that you want to do in any negotiation, no matter how much you want to get what is involved, you always have to be neutral, as though you don't care at all. If this negotiation is successful, that's good. If it's not, then no problem. This gives you power. You have to prepare, and the preparation is probably 80% of your success in negotiating. And the word is, remember, I've said this 100 or 1,000 times, think on paper, think on paper, prepare on paper, write it down, write it down, write it down. I remember when I first started using the idea of writing things, I was going into a negotiation in Chicago, 3,000 kilometers away, and it was a full day of negotiating on a series of important parts of a contract. So I sat down and I wrote, what are all the things that the other person wants in this negotiation? Always start from the point of view of the other person. Like, what do they want? If possible, you can speak to other people who have negotiated with this person and ask them, what sort of things do they want? What are they likely to ask for? And so on. Do your homework, because you're doing your homework can change the result in a very positive way for you. And so I sat down and I wrote everything that I thought, maybe 20 different things that the other party would want to gain in this negotiation. And then I wrote down everything that I wanted to gain in this negotiation. And I remember I flew to Chicago and I met with them, and we had scheduled a full day. Is their top executives and me would spend a whole day developing this complicated contract. So I started off and I said, I was thinking about you before I came here, and I wrote down these are the things that you would want to achieve in this negotiation. Let me read them for you, and you tell me if this is accurate. So I read them out, all 20 different things, and I said, of all of these, what is most important to you? And they said, well, this is more important, that's more important, that's more important. It's never more than 3 or 4 different things. And I said, okay, what I want to accomplish in these areas is this. And they said, okay. And we had a clear understanding of the situation of both parties. And we resolved the whole thing in 45 minutes. We had scheduled an entire day of negotiating, and everybody was happy and satisfied within 45 minutes because of the preparation. That contract, by the way, was more than 30 years ago, and we are still doing business together today on the same contract as 30 years ago. So preparation is really, really important. And I will say this, write it down, write it down, write it down. All successful people write it down. There is a magazine in the United States called Inc. or Incorporated. It's a magazine for startup businesses, entrepreneurial businesses, growing businesses, very popular magazine. And they did a study of 50 executives or owners of successful businesses, successful startups that had become large businesses and were earning a lot of money. And they asked them, what is the most important tool that you use to control your time and your business? 49 out of 50 said a yellow pad like this, and they write everything down. They write down everything they want to accomplish in a meeting. They write down everything they want to accomplish in a day and set priorities. But 49 out of 50 said this was the most important tool that they had for success. So therefore, one of the rules for success is do what successful people do. Do what other successful people do, and just do it over and over again. You don't need to ask questions, and you don't need to worry if there's something better. Just simply discipline yourself to do what other successful people do. And what do you think will happen? The answer is you will soon start to get the same results that other successful people get. So let's begin. And what I came up with for our seminar today, which is a little bit shorter than a normal time, but I came up with is 10 rules for negotiating success. Number 1 is remember that everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable. No matter what price people say or what price people write down, it's negotiable. So you see, every price was chosen by one person. And what they did is they said, what is the most we can charge in order to sell this item? And that's the price. I remember it was February. I was living in a cold part of the country, and I went into a major menswear store, one of the best in the city, very expensive clothes. And there was a coat, a beautiful wool coat that was for sale. And the coat was something like $500. And so I looked at it and I said, can I get a better price on this? And the clerk said, "Oh, no. It's that the price is written down. You see, it's written down on the price tag. I mean, that's the price. You can't change the price in a retail store." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. The winter is almost over. This coat has not sold. If you don't sell it very soon, it will sit in your warehouse for another year before you bring it out. So I will give you an offer of $250 for this $500 coat. And the clerk said, no, that's not possible. We don't negotiate on our prices. The price is written down on the price tag. I said, well, take it to your boss, because there's always one person who sets the price. Take it to your boss and tell him that this offer is good for 3 hours. This was now about noon in the city, so it's good until 3 o'clock. After that, the offer is withdrawn. He said, well, I will, but there's no chance that we will sell it for less. I went back to my office and I just waited with my hand by the phone. And at about 2 o'clock, the clerk called up and said, I spoke to my boss, and my boss said, yes, they'll sell it to me for $250. I said, of course. And so therefore, even when you go to a store, especially if it's an expensive item, is be prepared to make a lowball offer. A lowball offer is offer half price. Now,
Baja o lowball es normalmente la mitad del precio. Les va a parecer
a little
Parece
bit more.
ridículo, mas às vezes eles vão jogar um pouquinho para cima do que você ofereceu.
So, and the worst thing that can happen is nothing. So before this was the price, if they say they will not negotiate, well, you haven't lost anything. But always be prepared. Think of it as a game. The game is that no matter what people ask for, if the price has been set by someone else, say, I'll offer you a lower price and see what happens. And eventually get into the habit of always asking for a better price. Really important. So we say people are afraid of rejection, but you must see negotiating as a game. It's just a game. And your job is to play the negotiating game whenever there's a transaction, and your job is to win at the game of negotiating. Number two is there are 3 key purposes in business negotiating. Now, I use the words business negotiating as opposed to transactional negotiating. A transaction is where you buy an item and go away, and you may never come back again. You may never deal with the same person twice. A business negotiation is very different. The business negotiation largely determines your success or failure in life. It determines how much you earn. It determines the size of the house that you live in. It determines the quality of the car that you drive. It determines the standard of living your family has. It determines the restaurants that you go to. This is all business negotiating. Business negotiating is entered into with the thought of entering into further negotiations with the same person in the months ahead. As I told you, I've entered into negotiations with businesses. Sometimes I negotiate with myself against 6 to 8 experienced, smart business people, and I've been successful. And what happens is the next time there's an issue, we negotiate again, or sometimes we don't have to meet again. We can phone up and we say, look, the contract has changed, the situation has changed. Let's make these changes so that we're all happy. The most important part of a business negotiation is that both parties are happy and they're committed to fulfilling their responsibilities. I've seen situations where business people have been very aggressive at negotiating and negotiated a very high price against the competition. And then I asked the competition, what are you going to do about this? And they said, nothing. Is we will agree rather than fighting with them. We will agree to their prices and terms, but we will just take no action, and we will never work with them again. So the purpose of business negotiation is so that everyone is happy and committed to the contract, and that each party is willing to enter into new negotiations with the same person in the future. Sometimes you will negotiate with people and you will work with them for 10 or 20 or 30 years. Sometimes all of your career, you'll be going back and forth and negotiating new agreements with the same people. So always think long term when you're negotiating in business. You can think short term when you're negotiating to buy a car. You buy a car, you don't care if they're happy. What you do is you just ask for a lower price, and they ask for a higher price, and you go back and forth until you find a price that is satisfactory to both. So these are the purposes. You seek fairness and equity. In business negotiating, you do not try to defeat the other person. This is not a war. Is when you enter into a negotiation in business, this is something that is very important for you and for them. And both parties must be happy, or they won't have any motivation or enthusiasm to continue and to fulfill the contract. Remember, signing a contract is fine, but what if they say, well, I'm just not going to do anything? And you call them up, they delay and they procrastinate and they have excuses and so on. But if they're not happy with the results, why should they fulfill the contract? So it's very important. I remember whenever I sit down and speak in a negotiation, and I have negotiated several, as I said, multi-million-dollar agreements with a team on the other side and me alone on my side. And I always start off saying, thank you very much for being here. My goal is for you to be happy with our discussion. I never call it a negotiation. I just call it a discussion. Is if you're not happy with any part of this agreement, by all means, tell me, and let's find a way, because I want you to be happy and go away comfortable with the agreement. And they were always surprised, because they thought this is going to be a big fight to come up with final terms. I said, no, not at all. We're going to work together until we're both happy. And it always worked out. Every single one of these big negotiations, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, they all worked out. Everybody was happy and the negotiations were successful. And you can do the same thing. So the power is the critical element in every negotiation. Now, your job is to develop power and use your power. Now, you don't use your power like waving a baseball bat or a club. What you do is you use what we call silent power, sometimes soft power. People do not like to feel that you have too much power. So just be low-keyed about it. We say here, the first power can be expertise. Now, this is really important. This means that you do your homework and you check everything about this company. You go to their website and look at the size of the company and who is most important and what are their products and services. Look at what they advertise and what they say about their products and services. This is vital information for you to have. And check their competition and learn everything that you possibly can about them before you negotiate. The second power of negotiating is knowing the needs of the other person. What is it that they need? Nobody enters into a negotiation unless they need something. They want something. So what is it? And here's an important point. It always comes down to one thing. There's always one thing that is more important than anything else in a negotiation. And that's the thing that they hide. They don't want to tell you that this is the most important factor. So your job is to ask questions and listen and take notes, and it will fall out. And once you know their most important concern, then you have power in negotiating. The third power is the power of identifying or having what is called empathy. That means that you are easygoing, relaxed, you're friendly, you're charming, you're helpful, you're positive, that the other person likes you. And the more they like you, then the more open they are to being flexible about the terms of the negotiation. Now, how do you get people to like you? Well, it's a very simple formula. It's based on the rule, the great rule of life. is listening builds trust. Listening builds trust. So how do you get the opportunity to listen in a negotiation? The answer is you ask questions and write down the answers. When you ask a person a question and they answer you, you get a chance to listen, and listening builds trust. And the more trust there is in a negotiation, the better terms and conditions you're going to get. You're going to get a higher price if you're selling. You're going to get a lower price if you're buying. Then the fourth power, the fourth form of power is the power of rewarding or punishing. If you have the ability to give them something or to withhold something, this gives you tremendous power. You can reward them financially. You can reward them by moving them up so that they are first in line. Whatever rewards you can get gives you power to give it or to withhold it. And finally, the power of investment. This is so important. It means that either you or the other party has spent a lot of time looking into this negotiation and this other person. You spent time and money and resources. You may have traveled and spoken to other people. So the more you have invested yourself, the less power you have. The more they have invested, the less power they have. But simultaneously, the more you invest, the more knowledge you have of what the other person wants and needs. Number 4, emotions can help or hurt you in a negotiation. That means the person who is more emotional about the result, they care more for the result than the other person, is at a disadvantage. So therefore, even though you want it very strongly, you must cover your emotions, and on the outside, you must be very calm. Think of the bird, a duck, or a gander swimming across a calm lake, and the duck on the top is very calm, but underneath the legs are running, churning very, very, very fast. Well, that's what you should be in a negotiation. On the outside, you look very calm and relaxed, but on the inside, you are thinking and planning and organizing and so on. So it's very important, very important. And so if you get emotionally involved, it reduces your power to negotiate. If you really emotionally want to be successful, then sometimes you have to pay any price. So it's really important that you guard your emotions and be careful about what you expose yourself to. Number 5, time is another critical element in every investment, in every negotiation, is that if you have a short period of time, then you cannot negotiate in your own behalf. Well, there's a story back in the early days of America where the fire departments in each town were privately owned. So if your house was on fire, you would send a messenger quickly to the fire department and say, please come. And the fire department had volunteers, usually people who worked in businesses around the fire department, and they'd all jump into the fire wagon and they'd all race out to your house to put out the fire. Now, once they reached it, because it's a private business, they would then negotiate with you over how much they would charge you to put out the fire in your house. Now, a person whose house is on fire has very little power in a negotiation. They have to pay whatever price they charge. Well, it's the same thing. We say that if time is very pressing, then you have to accept terms and conditions that are maybe not to your best advantage. If time is on your side, then the other person is at a disadvantage. So your job is to allow yourself as much time as possible, but then to tell the other person that their time is limited. There's a story about an American businessman who went to Japan to negotiate. a major contract. And he was picked up at the airport by his Japanese counterparts in this negotiation. And they said, please give us your ticket so we can arrange your return flight. And now they knew that he had planned for 3 days for this negotiation because he had a return airplane ticket back to the US. So they took that away, and then they took him to the factory where the negotiation was going to take place. But then they took him and they showed him the factory, and they took him out for dinner, and then they took him and showed him the city and so on. And they kept stretching the time out and stretching the time out until they were only 3 hours from the person having to fly back to the US. And so then they began to negotiate. And he only had 3 hours. He had planned for 3 days, but the Japanese business people had used up all the time. So he had to put together and agree to all of these terms and conditions in 3 hours. And then he had to race to the airport, and he only arrived in time to catch his plane back. And he got a very bad deal. He had to concede on everything because he had no time. So it's an interesting example of Japanese negotiating where they use up all your time, and now you have to accept almost any conditions because you have no time left. Your job is to create as much time as possible for yourself and as little time as possible for your counterparts. The key to effective negotiating is for you to develop options on every occasion. This is one of the most important things in life. We say you are only as free as your well-developed options. In any part of your life, if you only have one choice, you have no freedom. Your hands are tied. But if you have 2 or 3 or 4 choices, then you have lots of freedom. In the US, and it's probably the same everywhere, if a person wants to buy a new car, they go to between 5 and 10 different dealerships to look at cars. Once they have been to all these dealerships and negotiated with each one, then they know exactly the very best place to buy their car and the very best price that they can get. A person never goes to one car dealership and buys one car without developing options. So remember this is one of the great rules of life. You are only as free as your well-developed options. The more choices or options you have, the greater freedom you have to make a better deal. By the way, when you are negotiating with a company and you know everything about their competition, you know what their competition will offer, what their competition will pay, what their competition will bring to the contract, that gives you tremendous power. And you see this in business shows on television all the time, is the very smartest business people are always developing options with other companies. Number 7 is know exactly what you want from a negotiation before you go in. And I have to repeat this: think on paper, think on paper, think on paper. Write it down, write it down, write it down. Is you really do not know what you want until you translate it from your head to your hand and put it on paper. Once you have it on paper, you can sit down with a friend and say, look, this is what I think they want. This is what we want. Do you have any ideas or suggestions on ways to improve it or make it better? And if they don't, then you are in a position of strength. Number 8, this is my favorite. Preparation is 80% of investment or of negotiating. Preparation, preparation, preparation. In English, there is a word called over preparation. And what we say is that professional business people like yourself never over prepare. it's not possible to over prepare. So therefore, do everything possible. Keep asking, what are all the different sources of information? What do I need to discover? One of the things you can do is find someone who has negotiated a contract with the same person that you're going to negotiate a contract, and ask them, what happened? What did you learn? Is how do they negotiate? What should I be watching for? Where do the dangers lie? And it's amazing. Someone else who has negotiated a big contract with another person can tell you a series of little things that will give you a tremendous advantage when you do negotiation. So always prepare, and then prepare again and prepare again. And remember, for professionals like yourself, there is no such word as over prepare. You cannot be too well prepared. So ask what, discuss the situation with others. What are the starting positions or opening positions of each party? What are the key issues to be decided? And here is what we call the law of four. This again is one of the great principles of negotiating. The law of four says that you may have a contract of 50 pages with different parts of the agreement, but only four of those agreement or different clauses will be the key to the negotiation. There will be number one, and then there'll be 1, 2, 3 underneath. In negotiating, your number one has to be different from the number one of the other person. If they both have the same number one, for example, people think, well, price is the most important thing. Both of us want to get the best price, but that's not always true. Very often, the other person wants to get best delivery, best terms, the longest period of time to pay, different aspects of the negotiation or the purchase or the sale. So therefore, there's always four critical factors. Now, I learned something, and I call it Socratic negotiation. Socrates, the great philosopher. And here's what it is, and it's one of the most beautiful tools that I've ever discovered, is when you go through a negotiation, you start off with the first clause, and you discuss it and agree or disagree. If you agree, and you will agree on virtually every clause in the contract, but you will then come to a clause and you both disagree. You have different ideas. So what you do is you put this aside. You say, well, let's come back to this later, okay? And go on to the next clause and keep doing this. And then you'll come to something else where you disagree. You say, let's put this aside. And you do this the first time you go through the entire contract is you discuss every single term, and wherever there is argument, you put it aside for later. Then when you finish going through the contract for the first time with both parties, then you go back and you start with the items that you are disagreed on, and you discuss them, and you look for some way for it to work. If you still cannot agree, just put it aside again and keep going. Each time you do this, it's the most amazing thing. You may go through 60 parts of a contract and end up with 10 that you don't agree on. So what you do is you put these aside. Then you go through it again, and you'll end up with 5. And eventually you'll end up with 4. And there's always 4. And then what you do is you just keep putting it aside and coming back. And finally, you'll come to number 1, and you'll find a way to agree. I remember I was negotiating a very big contract, multi-million-dollar contract for the development of a housing program in Alberta. And this was 330 homes, 330 lots. And the most important part for the team of business people on the other side of the table was that the developer pay for the underground water, sewer, and overhead electricity and roads before they got approval to develop and build homes on these lots. Well, this was a multi-million dollar, like $3.3 million, and my clients did not have the money. So we kept putting this aside until we finally found this was the last one. This was the last key. And we were both at an impasse like this. We didn't have the money. We didn't tell them that, but they wanted the money and we didn't have the money. So finally, as a negotiator, I said, okay, we will pay you the money, $3.3 million. And they went, yeah, yes, they were so happy. I said, however, we will have to pay it as we sell each building lot for a home. And once we sell the lot, then we pay you the amount that is due for that lot for underground services. And they said, all right, okay, as long as you promise to pay and signed a contract, that's their most important point. And we did. And the entire 50-part agreement came together with the agreement on that last one. We will pay the amount, but not right away. And they were so happy that we agreed to pay that amount that they were willing to delay the payment. And it worked out well for everybody. That entire 330 homes were developed and people still live in them and work in them to this day. So that's really, really important. Number 9, the walkaway method of negotiating. This is a tactic that you can use. And basically what happens is if you are not making any progress, you say, well, it looks like we will not be able to agree today. So thank you very much. And you get up and you walk out. And this is always shocking to the other person. They're surprised. You stand up and you just walk out the door. I remember we were buying a car for my wife, and we knew a lot about car pricing because I had imported more than $25 million worth of Japanese vehicles, and this was a Japanese automobile dealership. So they said, here's the price. And I said, well, we knew that there was a 22% markup on every car. So what we did is we agreed, we said, this is the price we will offer. And we offered a profit of 11%, split it in half. We didn't tell them that we knew what the markup was. And they said, no, absolutely not possible. The price is the price and it's not flexible. I said, well, thank you very much. And I said, okay. And my friends who were with me and my wife all stood up at one time and walked out the door. And the woman that we were negotiating with came running after us and said, no, please come back, please come back. So we came back and we sat down and they agreed to reduce the price by a little bit. And we asked, is that the best you can do? By the way, one of the great questions in negotiating is always to ask, is that the best you can do? Is that the very best price you can give us? If that's the very best price to sell or to buy, always ask that. And if there's flexibility in the price, they will tell you. So we got up and walked out, and they came running after us, and the sales manager came out of his office and they ran after us. Please come back, please come back. So we went back and we sat down. We did this about 4 or 5 times. And finally, they sold us the car for my wife at the price that we had originally offered. And I still remember when we walked out of the dealership, the sales manager came and said, you sure don't know very much about buying a car, do you? You sure don't know how to buy a car, do you? I said, well, I think we do because we got our ideal price, but thank you very much. So remember, don't be afraid to stand up and walk away. Sometimes I remember I was trying to buy a piece of jewelry for my girlfriend in a jewelry store. And the man was asking a very high price. Jewelry is always marked up a lot. And I said no, and we went back and forth. And my girlfriend really liked this piece of jewelry. And I said, well, I said, no, they're charging too much. The markup is too high. So I said to him, thank you very much. And we got up and we walked out of the store and walked down the street. And my girlfriend was saying, oh, but that's such a beautiful piece of jewelry. That's what I really wanted. And now we've walked out of the store and we're walking away. I said, just be patient, just be patient. And we walked about 100 meters. And at 100 meters, the owner came out of the store and ran after us and came to us and said, okay, we'll sell it to you at the price that you offered. And my girlfriend was crying because she was so emotional about it. But remember, you never know the best price until you stand up and walk away. You never know the best price that you can get until you stand up and walk away. It's one of the great techniques in negotiating that's ever been discovered. And you always do it in a friendly way. Don't make it hard for the person to come back to you. Don't make it hard for the person to give in and agree with you. Make it easy by being friendly and being never insult and just say, I'm sorry that we just can't pay that price and we really would like to, but in other words, make it really easy for them to say, oh, okay. Because remember, you are a customer in the hand, and if you walk away, you are going to buy from someone else. And instead of earning a small profit, they will earn no profit at all. So just always be prepared to stand up and walk away. And here's the final point, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. The final point is that no negotiation is ever final. If you get new information, reopen the negotiation. Call them up and say, look, I've got new information that I didn't know before, and I would like to discuss the price, buying or selling with you. And say to them, if ever something happens that you did not anticipate, please feel free to call me. And if it's reasonable, I will change the prices and terms. This is called a Chinese contract. And I've used a Chinese contract. I used to live in Singapore and Hong Kong. I lived in Asia for a long time. And what I learned is that the Chinese, when they enter into a contract and sign it, for the Western, for the Western business person, that is the end of the contract. But for the Chinese, that's the beginning of the contract. So what happens from now on? If we get new information, both parties are open to going back and changing the contract, because the number one concern is that the other person be happy, and they be happy enough to comply with the contract, to actually fulfill their half of the contract. If they're not happy, then basically they just have to do nothing. And by doing nothing or delaying, procrastinating, putting off a decision and so on, you don't get anything. So always be open to changing the contract if the facts, as we say, on the ground, if the facts change, be open to change it. I always say to my clients, my business clients, is I want you to be happy. If you're not happy for any reason, then we'll change it, because I want you to be happy, because I want you to fulfill the contract. And so that always happens. You say, would you do that? They're always amazed. Would you do that? Would you change the contract if we discovered something new or different? I said, yes, because I want you to be happy. And that has been my great strength in negotiating major contracts all my life, is my focus from the beginning has been that you, my counterparts, will be happy. So that being said, Michael, I'm wide open to questions. I'm sorry I didn't finish in 45 minutes, but we'll go as long as necessary if there are questions.
Brian, thank you very much. That was fantastic. And of course, it's wonderful that you've spoken a little bit longer, because we've always had the benefit of your wisdom and wise words, and it's a delight to listen. We have lots of questions lined up, so I can see some hands raised. So Bernardo, could you please give us the first question?
Okay. Hi, Mr. Tracy, Polonsky, Michael, and everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. Okay, I have experimenting something strange because I want to sell. I am selling actions from a emerald mining company. It's a new company, and it's not being so easy. And I can get the price to go down from $60,000 to $30,000, and the emerald mining is potentially valuated in $500 million. But I offer the actions, one or two actions, to people that I know, investors that know me in the United States, Germany, Russia, and other parts in the world. But I don't know why they don't trust to buy the actions. I want to know what can I do?
Well, what we're talking about here is really selling and convincing them to accept your contract. One of the things that you need to do is to find out what they want more than anything else. And one of the things that I use just as a technique, I use what I call the magic wand technique. And I say, Mr. Client, is if you could wave a magic wand and have a perfect agreement on this subject, what would it look like to you?
Assunto em particular. Como é que você usaria a varinha mágica? Você entende? As pessoas só compram de você
Si sienten que les ofrecen
an improvement of some kind that is greater than what they are getting today. If they feel that they can continue to get a good deal from their existing contracts, the idea of changing is too big for them. It's too much inconvenience. There's too many unknowables. There's too much danger. So people are always consumed by what is called inertia. Inertia means that they will keep on doing what they're doing. We call it the comfort zone. They're already in a comfort zone, and you're suggesting that they move out of their comfort zone to where they will be uncomfortable. And instead of having their existing contract, which they're happy with, they're going to take a chance on you. So you have to ask them to tell you, what would we have to do to satisfy you in this area? What would we have to do to make it worthwhile for you to change? And ask them that. Sometimes they have not thought about changing. And so they will say, well, let me think about that. And your job is to help them think, what benefit or advantage would they have to be sure of getting to change to use your services? And unless they are clear about that, and unless you can offer it, they will stay with what they call the devil that they know. The devil they know, which is their existing contract, is much more secure, much more comfortable than a brand new contract with a new company. So you have what all new companies have, is you have to break into the market by offering an advantage or benefit that is greater than their current suppliers are offering. And you have to ask them to tell you, if you could wave a magic wand and your situation was perfect, what would it look like? And what would he have to do to create that perfect situation for you? And you have to be patient, and you have to go back, and you have to give them time. And the more money involved, the more time and the more people will be involved in the decision. So you need to be, as you are, Bernardo, you need to be friendly and patient and professional, and just keep persisting. Persistence is the most important quality of all in your business. So just keep persisting and keep going back. And it's amazing. The beginning people will say no, no, no. And then they'll say no, no. And then they'll say no. And then they'll say maybe. But you must persist.
Okay, I'm persisting,
Great.
and I excuse me, and I explain them the profits because they only need to buy, and it's a dead time for those prices. And I explain that it's only buy, it's the action, and wait for the profits and it's in 6 months it's going to be rentable. And even that, it's they don't believe that. And they said when the profit is so high, then they don't trust. Why?
Yes.
And the mine and the company need new investors.
Well, one of the things that is very important is make sure that you write everything down. Put everything in writing so they can hold it up and they can read it. Make it easy for them to explain it to other people, the other decision makers. And remember this, in working with any company, there's always many people who can say no or maybe. There's only one person who can say yes. And one of your jobs is to find who is the one person who can say yes, and then find a way to talk to that person, because that's the key. Many little people will say no, but your job is to find the one person who can say yes, and then show
Yeah.
them how much better off the company can be if they follow your advice.
Great. Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much. That's the key.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good advice, Banana. It's a very interesting case because I can see it's a real challenge working in a difficult and challenging industry, and a great answer there from Mr. Tracy. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next question. Dana, over to you, sir.
Hi, I'm Dana from Iraq. It's very honor to me to have this talking to Mr. Brian Tracy. I'm a good follower of him. I have three questions, quick questions, because we don't have time. First, how to control your emotion when you are selling to our customer. This is number one. Number two, we have, I'm very social guy, in my life. So I have a lot of friends and they are all working in the same field. I'm a dentist and I have a company. So whenever they call me, they ask for discount. So every time the supervisors, the guys who's working with me, they are getting upset because I'm the owner. So I make the decision to give them the discount because of, their friend and these things. So this is what the main problem that I have. Okay. Also, we have, I want to know also about the negotiation with the customer. Okay, what's the main points that the sales person should focus on it? Okay, that you see that this is the main point to enter to, to start the negotiation with them. And giving discount is the easiest way, to sell, but we don't want to give discount. This is the main point that,
Yes.
We need to know how to make this customer. Today, I have the same problem. Last week, I've solved the same problem I have, that everyone is asking for discount.
Yes.
While we're giving the best service, and we are one of the most famous company in Iraq in our field.
Well, let's start there. The interesting discovery in interviewing thousands of customers is that price is never the reason for buying your product or service. Price is never the reason. It's one reason, because everybody wants to be sure that they are not paying too much. They want to be sure that the price they're getting is the best price that they can get. But that's not the main reason. Most salespeople say price, price, price. Price is everything. No, it's not. I used to do an exercise. I would be speaking to 1,000 or 2,000 salespeople, and I would say, price is never the reason for buying your product or service. And the whole audience would go, ooh, ooh, like that's not true. I said, okay, let me prove it. Here's my proof. Is there anyone in this room who has anything about their person, purse, pen, anything that you bought only because it was the lowest price? Anything about your person? And there's not a single hand goes up. Not a single person has bought anything because it was the lowest price. People don't want to pay more than they have to, but that's not the most important factor. Now, what you have to do is change people's focus from price, 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 price. And people only focus on price if they have nothing else to focus on. So what you have to do, and I've done this 1,000 times in sales. I've been in sales since I was 16 years old. And that's unfortunately a long time ago, is move the focus off of price and onto benefits. What benefits do you receive when you use my product or service in comparison with something else? Remember, whatever you sell is in comparison. You have competition. You have to prove that your product or service is better than the competition because of the benefits that the customer will enjoy. That's the starting point. Once you've proved that, then negotiating price a little more or a little less is quite easy. But if all you're talking about is price, then this person, price, then I can negotiate and demand lower prices, and I can demand this and so on. Take the focus away from price. Say, what I say is this: I know price is important to you, Mr. Customer. Could we come back to that in a couple of minutes? I'm sure that price will be perfectly satisfactory to you. Most important is, what is it that you benefit from in my purchase? What is it that you get? What is it that you want more than anything else? Let's be clear about that, and then we'll come back to the price. Once the customer is clear about what they want, the price becomes a secondary question. And the interesting thing is, the third richest man in the world, last year he was the richest man, is a man named Bernard Arnault. And he runs a company called LPVM in Paris. And it is the most expensive products in the world. It's perfume and clothes and purses, Givenchy and Dior and beautiful product. People have to make an appointment to go to their stores, and they have to prove and have their ID to come into the store to pay 10 times as much as they would have to pay for something similar available in any store on the street. People line up and they phone and they make appointments, and then they buy the product and they proudly hold this product like a Givenchy purse or something else. People happily pay 10 times as much for the prestige of owning the product. So price is not the critical factor. Price is only a major factor if you make it a major factor. So just always say, let me come back to that. Let's come back to that in a second. What's most important is how you benefit from our working together, and keep focusing on benefit, 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 because that is the key factor that determines the sale. So now, excuse my memory, but please give me your second question.
I was asking about how to overcome the relationship, the social relationship that always is making problems for us, because when they know the owner of the company, they contact me directly. Last time I have sold an OPG panoramic X-ray, he was asking like $500, 500. She was with me, so the husband took the phone from him. Okay, sell it to her with $170,000, and I will give you a big box of whiskey. So I have accepted that. So, instead,
the three words that determine your success or failure are competition, competition, and competition. And all the other companies in your industry are trying very hard to get your customers, and you must be trying very hard to get their customers. So this kind of competition will never end. There is no magic solution to this competition. The main thing is people buy from you for two reasons. They like you and they trust you. And so your focus must be on the relationship as it is and on taking good care of your customers. Make people feel important. Make people feel important. Here's,
Svetlana, can you mute, please?
here's something very simple, but each time that you talk to a customer, send them an email and say, thank you very much for your time today. I very much enjoyed talking to you, and I look forward to talking with you again soon. Very simple, 1 or 2 lines, but people are emotionally affected when you immediately respond. Not tomorrow, not at the end of the week, but you will leave their office or you get off the phone, immediately send them a thank you email. It is quite amazing how much that builds trust and builds trust. And finally, you reach a point of trust where people say, I would prefer to buy from them than anyone else. Why? Well, I just feel better about them. Remember, it's how much they like and trust your company that is going to determine the final decision. So look for every opportunity. I had a friend who started off at the bottom selling real estate many years ago. And somebody told him, send thank you cards to each person that you speak to. And so every time he spoke to somebody, at the end of the day, he would sit down and write thank you cards and mail them, put them in the mail. Within a year, he was earning more money than anybody else in his field. He was getting more referrals and recommendations. People were buying houses and selling houses through him. Today, he's a retired multi-millionaire in sales. And many companies transformed the company. Let's say they had 20 salespeople. They would say, every day you come back to the office, we will hand out the cards and you will write thank you cards to everybody that you spoke to today. And then they would keep track. How many thank you cards are you sending each day? Some people were sending 2 or 3. Some people were sending 10 or 15. The ones who sent the most thank you cards made more money faster than anyone else. Receiving just a little thing like a thank you card is emotionally very powerful. But today we have the internet. So what does it take for you to take 1 minute and write a little thank you email? It takes nothing, but it has an amazing impact on your potential customers. So that alone is worth the price of today.
Great, thank you very much for that, Lance. Let's move on to, we're running out of time. I'd just like to say there are lots of positive, wonderful comments here to you, Mr. Tracy, including this lovely one from Faisal Khan, who says, brilliant today, is my dream come true listening to you live, Mr. Brian Tracy. I've read all your books and I've benefited a lot personally and professionally. So that's a lovely thought there.
Thank you, Faisal.
A question, next question. We're going to get down to the last couple of questions. Could we ask Grecia to ask a question, please?
Yes, thank you, Michael. But I think Marianne raised the hand first, then me.
Okay. Let's go to you, Marianne. Sorry, Marianne, your question.
Thank you, Grisha. Brian, I've been a follower since like 8 years ago. I've learned the goal setting from you, and then I just wanna like, I'm so happy that I was able to be called today. Um, I just want to ask you because we are all talking about negotiation, right? And first things come to mind is that negotiated from a perspective of selling something. But what if the negotiation is comes like, for example, I am from a company that is dealing with a self-regulatory body, and we are giving out campaigns for investors that that requires regulatory in terms of like terms and negotiation in someone who is a regulator. How do you like, there are some that are not in the, for example, this is not a day-to-day thing that a stock market would do, but since it's a campaign, it's a marketing campaign that you would like to like, make a difference and have a game-changing um strategy when it comes to it, and it's not the norm. How are you going to like, what is the strategy when it comes to like convincing regulatory bodies when it comes to negotiation?
Are you talking about convincing regulatory bodies or are you convincing customers?
Actually, it's someone in authority to be able to offer it to the client.
That's different. You're talking about a decision maker who can okay the purchase of your services. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Well, remember that people don't buy products, they buy people. Is that their relationship with you is more important than what you sell. One of the most important things you can do is to get face to face with your prospect, even just once. I have good clients that I have worked with for 20 years. I have never met them. I speak to them on the phone. We speak by email. We've transacted many tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've never met them. I've only spoken to them. However, your job at the very beginning, if possible, is just to meet them so that they can put a name to your face. From then on, you can deal with them through technology, through telephones and email and so on. The other thing to remember is that people buy you because they like you and they trust you. And the sooner they see you and get to meet you and see your smile and hear you tell them that one thing that makes us different than anyone else is that we make a total commitment to our clients. And our commitment is to help you to maximize your financial resources more and better than anybody else. I mean, tell them that. That's why I'm here, is because Michael and I have talked about this. Why do people come on to a program like this? And I've come to the conclusion that there's only three reasons, and they are to make more money. I call this MMM. The reason people deal with you is because they think that at the end of the day, they're going to make more money working with you rather than your competitors. You must convince them of this. They cannot buy from you unless that is a fact on the ground, as they say. Now, how do you make more money in our business? And the answer is SMS, which means sell more stuff. So you MMM by SMSing. And so your job is to help them, show them that by using your services, they will sell more stuff. They will generate more revenue. They will have more profits. They will be better off at the end of the day than if they work with anyone else. If they are not convinced of that, all they can do is give you excuses and delay and procrastinate. So your job is to focus like a laser beam on helping them make more money. And just tell them what we have found in talking with our clients is that their primary concern in business is to make more money. Would that be correct for you, Mr. Prospect or customer? They say, well, yes. Sometimes they haven't thought about this. They say, yes, that is our primary motivation. And it's not only the motivation of the person you're talking to, it's the motivation of other people in the company who are the decision makers. So the second is, well, the only way you can make more money is you need to sell more stuff. You need to do more business, better business, higher transactions. Is that correct? They'll say, yes. Well, we have developed an expertise in helping you to generate more revenues so that you make more money. Can I tell you one of the or two of the things that we can do for you? And people are absolutely fascinated by ways to make more money. They will push aside their schedule. They will find a place to talk to you. They'll take you out for lunch. And your job is to deliver on your promises. There's a rule in branding, and I repeat myself, but in branding, they say, what is your brand? Okay, you as a person have a brand. The brand is the way people think about you and talk about you when you're not there. So what is your personal brand? Most people develop a brand by accident. Top people are very clear about how they want their customers to think about them and talk about them. So here's the two keys. Very important, write this down. Your brand is made up of two factors. Factor number one are the promises that you make. That's what people buy. That's why people do business with you, because you make them promises. And the promises are consistent with what they want. And what do they want? They want to make more money and sell more stuff, MMM and SMS. The second part of branding are the promises that you keep. People hear promises all day long. Every advertisement that comes in, read the internet, the email, the products and services they offer. I would say 90% in my experience are not true, but they're beautiful ads. Have you read the ads? Wow, holy smoke. You think that if you buy this product, it's going to take care of you your whole life. So people are making promises all the time, but it is when you make a promise and then you keep your promise. That is all the difference. That is the key to your success in life. So when people talk about you when you're not there, they talk about you after you have come and gone. They say, what kind of person is he or she? And they say, that person, you can trust them completely. If they say that they will do something, they will do it. This has been my experience. That's the key to your success, is your brand. It's your reputation is more important than anything else in your business life. So think about it. What kind of reputation do you want to have? What do you want people to say about you, especially with regard to your ability to deliver on your promises? That's the key to success.
Great, thank you very much for that question. Thank you, Brian. With just one final question. Grecia, you were pushed to the back of the queue. You were technically the next person after Mariam, so please fire away on your question.
Thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, Brian, Tracy, it's an honor to meet you. I am with Lara from Mexico, and my question is, I work as a financial consultant. So I have to have prospects and to call them in order to get a meeting, either way, face-to-face or Zoom meetings. But I have been dealing that my last calls, like all my customers prefer to have a Zoom meeting instead of face-to-face. So my question is, how can I convince them to see each other in order to have this virtual meeting?
Please repeat your question.
Yes, thank you. My question is, how can I convince my customers to have the face-to-face meeting instead that to have the Zoom meeting that they are choosing? Because I give to them these two options. I can see you by Zoom, or I can see you in a coffee shop face-to-face, and they are always taking the Zoom meeting prefer.
Okay, everybody is busy, and the better the prospective customer, the busier they are, and they're always fighting to guard their time by putting off any meeting that will take up their time. This is normal and natural. If a person has lots of time to meet with you, they are not a good prospect. So therefore, what you need to do is you need to do it in stages. First stage is Zoom call, is be set up so that you can send them an address, a Zoom address, like today, and they can click on and you can talk by Zoom. Once they have a chance to experience you personally, because you are an obviously intelligent, well-dressed professional in this field. And by the way, I used to live in Ciudad de Mexico, and I remember that statue outside the door, outside of Zona Rosa, and I went past there every single day. So,
Very nice.
yes, and so what you do is take it in small steps. The first step is just a brief meeting on the phone. The second step, and you must have a reason for it, that is helping them to make more money by selling more stuff, and then do a Zoom call. A Zoom call, they're usually open to that because it's very quick. Once you've done a Zoom call, then if you have chemistry, as we say, you like the person likes you, then you can move to having coffee very close to where their office. And so you meet them for coffee for 20 minutes. Make it short, make it easy for people to do business with you. And if their biggest problem is time, sometimes it's interesting. I'm watching a really good television series called Suits, which is about a law firm in downtown New York. And it's amazing how often the people visiting, new people, will actually get coffee made from one of the stands on the street and bring up 2 cups of coffee. So I brought you a cup of coffee, and sometimes they'll find out from their secretary how people like their coffee. So I brought you this coffee latte with caramel and chocolate and so on. And they say, wow. And so they say, and I just need a couple of minutes of your time. It's a very simple strategy. Just bring them a hot cup of coffee and bring yourself one as well. And say, I bought this for you. I thought we could take a couple of minutes. And it seems to work all the time. People always say, well, go, please sit down and thank you very much, because this is their favorite cup of coffee. And ask their secretary, how does he or she like their coffee? And then buy a coffee and bring it. I don't know if that helps you, but it's amazing that people will not give you time for an appointment for business, but they'll give you time if you bring them a cup of their favorite coffee. And the last thing that I will say is that you must be patient and persistent. You must be patient and persistent. I've worked with people for myself that I've spent 6 months before I got a meeting with that person. 6 months of patience and persistence, and they were out of town and tied up in meetings and so on. And then I finally got the meeting, and it led to business that went on for years, led to business that had enormous amounts of money. It was worth the patience and the persistence. And always be cheerful, always be friendly, never be impatient, always be a nice person. People love to do business with nice people, and you are obviously, Garcia, a very nice person. So just be patient and persistent, and you will get there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, Gracia, and thank you, Mr. Brian Tracy, for our wonderful session today. We're going to have to draw it to a close. I'm getting all sorts of instructions in my ears from the production team. So I'm sorry to Kay, Millen, various others who have your hands up. I'd really wanted to get to you today, but we have gone significantly over time. Mr. Brian Tracy, thank you so much. A lot of amazing feedback in the chat, people saying golden nuggets. It's been great listening to you. Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Thank you very much for so much knowledge. It's been a privilege to have you speak to us today. Everyone's very inspired. We've had almost 250 people on the call, which is phenomenal. And I think you'll all agree that every question, each and every one of you ask, whilst it may be representative of your own experience, actually the answers that come back from Mr. Tracy are very universal and applicable to all of us. And particularly the coffee trick. I mean, I always love anyone bringing me coffee. They'll always have my ear. So it's that's a great insight there. So I'm going to draw this session to a close now. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. We look forward very much to the next session. The recording of this session will be uploaded on Monday. You'll see it in your recording section, and we'll also attach the workbooks there too. Some of you have missed those, but those links will be sent out once again. So I have to say that's all for now. It's been an inspiring session. Good night, good evening, good morning, whatever to all of you around the world.
Let me just say thank you so much for each of you for being here. I consider it a great honor to be with you because you are some of the best in the industry, some of the best in the business. And so thank you for the opportunity to share stuff with you.
Thank you, sir. That's lovely to hear. Very inspiring. So with those final words, everyone have a wonderful, great weekend. And we look forward to the next session with Mr. Tracy. Take care. Bye-bye.